Welcome back to the Real News Network. We're talking to Elaine Bernard about trade unions in the U.S. and the economic crisis. Elaine is the head of the trade union program at the Harvard Law School. Thanks, Elaine. So we're in very extraordinary times. The economic crisis is deepening. Unemployment is going up at stratospheric numbers. How is the union movement going to respond? How do you think they should respond?
Sure. Well, some of the things don't change. Unions are fundamentally about organizing, and organizing isn't about just enrolling people. It's about bringing people together, building organizations that create resources to bring about change. If you think about it, one of the problems we face today, even in unions, is that a lot of people are going to be unemployed. Well, how do you follow? Successful organizing by unions has been when they follow their members into new areas and organize those areas. Well, if your members are going into unemployment, how do we make sure that we start creating some resources for those members to stay connected? I mean, one of the worst things about unemployment, along with loss of job, is loss of connection to other people. During the 1930s, one of the reasons unions were able to grow so much was a combination of a change in the labor law, but the other thing was huge movements of the unemployed, bringing young workers together, unemployed workers, and creating organization, using the opportunity to do education with those workers to help them learn the skills of organizing. So, there's a real opportunity in this crisis.
Are the union leaders a bit caught on something? In the 1930s, the extent to which the unions organized the unemployed was a demand for jobs. And that demand often was directed at government, and for government to directly hire people in government-financed jobs programs. But the Obama administration doesn't seem to have any interest in that. President Obama talked about how his stimulus package, 90% of the jobs are going to be created through the private sector. And there's very little indication of a direct jobs program. To organize the unemployed, doesn't it need to be a campaign to demand jobs? And how does the union jive that with the Obama administration agenda, which doesn't seem to be that?
Sure, and it's not just jobs, it's also the quality of the jobs. One of the problems in the 1930s is there were a lot of stupid jobs. Somebody digs a hole, somebody fills it in. In today's economy, I like the idea of green jobs. I think rebuilding the infrastructure, but building it differently, is very important. It'll not only help Americans, but it will help restructure our economy for the type of problems that the world faces. So I think there's some real opportunities there. But part of it is the labor movement is both an organization and a vehicle. And so what we need to do is start to think about how to use that vehicle of organizing to create a venue for our our laid off members. I don't see a whole lot of unions right now looking at that. First you're going to fight to retain jobs. But then you also need to create use an opportunity so that people can stay connected and involved in the union, even if they are facing layoffs. How does the labor movement create new organizations so that you can build for the next period, in this period?
But it goes back to what you were saying earlier. Do the unions see past the immediate servicing of their members and even organizing unorganized people who are working in jobs to something bigger in terms of the society, and clearly on the thousands and thousands of unemployed workers? If the main trade union leadership, for example, now calls, say, for a mass demonstration of the unemployed in Chicago or Detroit, who knows, the numbers could be enormous. They would have a movement overnight. They don't seem to be going in that direction.
It's only a year into this recession. You could point out, Roosevelt's first year was not full of, I tend to think that we're in for some very hard times. And the solutions that are being offered right now are much more timid than the type of solutions that will be required. Some of the key things that unions can do is, looking back to the 30s, very interesting that the people who later were so involved in the massive scale of organizing were people who often started by organizing the unemployed. You can take organizing skills from one environment and pass them on to others.
The unions are
We're
going to have
already
to...
seeing that, by the way. If you think about the Obama campaign, the number of young people who got involved in the election in 2008, who started to develop all sorts of skills. I mean, boy, if we could start to use that and they carry those skills over into, demanding voice in the workplace, we would have a core of people for organizing that is much more dynamic than what, our existing core today.
The trade unions, perhaps like the rest of us, are in a position of change or perhaps perish if the trade unions can't deal with this unemployment situation and find a way to position themselves. Don't they more or less, this process of their kind of marginalization of trade unions as a force in the society, they become less relevant?
There are a number of issues that need to be dealt with right now. Healthcare is obvious one. I mean, what happens when you're unemployed? Well, almost immediately you lose your health care. I mean, there's things like COBRA, so yeah, you can, if you're really wealthy, you can keep your health care, but no. So I think one of the things we're seeing now, which I think is a good thing, is that the labor movement looking at campaigns that seek to socialize the benefits that unions have historically won only for their members, and now say, no, we can't hold on to it, whether it's pensions, whether it's health care, unless everybody has them. So let's raise the floor. You look at really successful labor movements, and that's what they do. They win things not just for their own members, but they seek to use their power to spread it to everybody. I know that a few folks say, well, gee, if everybody had it, why would anybody join a union? Well, if you look at Canadian labor movement, which is 30% of the workforce is organized in Canada, they got universal comprehensive health care. Unions still bargain health care, but they bargain extra health care. So one of the things you want to do is you want to keep raising the floor. That's not a problem. That doesn't weaken unions, that strengthens unions, because it also builds in people a sense of we can win things, it doesn't isolate us, and I think there's a real opportunity to start to do some of that in this environment. The nice thing about a crisis is that it really does demand bold steps and things that were not even thinkable. Employee Free Choice Act looks very modest, but we have not been able to get labor law reform that's the least bit progressive probably since the Nixon administration and ERISA and OSHA. It's a time where I think you can really start to think bold things.
Well, we'll see if the trade unions rise to the challenge. Thanks very much for joining us, Elaine.
Sure.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network. There are times when reality just asserts itself, in spite of the haze created by television news and entertainment. Sometimes crisis rips a tear in the fabric of myth and propaganda. Now a profound economic crisis has ripped asunder the American dream itself. Millions of people losing jobs and homes. They lack proper health care and any real sense of security. Since 2001, workers' wages have fallen or remained stagnant, even though worker productivity has risen almost 33%. By 2006, the top 1% of households were receiving 23% of all pre-tax income, more than double what it was in the 1970s. It's the greatest concentration of income since 1928. As unemployment rises, we need to know why this crisis is happening and what we can do to defend ourselves. Why are wages so low? Why is the society so laden with debt? Is it in ordinary Americans' interest to have $1 trillion military budget to project power across the globe? Corporate television news won't ask these questions, let alone try to find answers. Only a truly independent news network can tackle these questions with courage and with ordinary people's interests in mind. We need a news network that's independent of corporations, governments, and political parties. We need the real news. But there won't be a real news network unless we raise substantial funds right away. The current financial crisis has hit our funding hard. Together, we do have the power to turn it around. There are already hundreds of thousands of people watching the Real News every month. If everyone pitches in, we can build an internet and cable television network that will change the face of media forever. You can organize house parties, talk to friends at school and at work, send email blasts and spread the word. Distribute this video to everyone you know. Pick up the phone and call a few friends and suggest they visit therealnews.com. Invest just 10 minutes a day to ask friends and colleagues to join the campaign to create a truly independent source of internet and television news. Together, we can build this network. Just 50,000 people at $10 a month gets us to our first level of sustainability. You can help us reach this goal, and when we do, we'll move to television in millions of homes across North America. Help us reach an audience in the millions. Please contribute generously. Spread the word. Let's make the Real News television network a reality.
Your tax-deductible donation makes it possible. Please contribute at therealnews.com.